This is the Junior Mental Flop Extreme. It is a fully functional 1x2x3 puzzle with the two types of turns a regular 1x2x3 would have. However, it also has some special moves hinted at by the cross pattern on the centers. This is actually a 2x2 shape mod made to look like a 1x2x3, and it turns like a fully functional 2x2 cube. Due to this, the cube shapeshifts a ton when it's scrambled. Overall, it's quite a crazy little puzzle. I got the inspiration to make the Junior Mental Flop Extreme after seeing Greg's Junior Mental Flop, which is simply a 2x2 mod without the extra 1x2x3 turns. The original Mental Flop, also made by Greg, is a 2x2x3 mod that appears to be a floppy cube. When I first set out to make the Junior Mental Flop Extreme, I wanted it to be the size of a regular 1x2x3, meaning it would have 19mm cubies. This would make the puzzle way too small to be able to use a mini Eastsheen 2x2 to make it, so I had to design a fully 3D printed mechanism for it. Unfortunately, although I did finish designing it, the resulting parts were too fragile to really work. Here's a corner with a little bit of support material still on the corner stock. The corner stock is so fragile that if I were to remove the support, the corner mechanism would go with it rather than staying on the part. I also wouldn't trust it at all to hold up during the puzzle's normal usage. Due to this, I abandoned the idea of making it with 19mm cubies and instead went for 2x2 sized cubies, which are 25mm. As you can see, the mini Eastsheen 2x2 is still too big to fit into the shape mod at this size, but this time around the difference is small enough that I thought I could cut down the mini cube to fit into these extensions. This would be an experiment as I had never previously cut it down this far. Success was not guaranteed. Well, here we have all of the parts that will comprise the Junior Mental Flop Extreme, or at least one of each type. So this would be the part that connects to the outer 1x2x3 corner. It just hooks in like that. And then this is the normal 2x2 corner that doesn't have the hook. And then this is the mini Eastsheen 2x2. And the thing is, the problem with this whole setup is that, as you can see right now, and as you saw earlier, there's no way this mini Eastsheen 2x2 is fitting into this extension, so I will have to cut off this corner so that that's possible. Now, every corner except for one is made up of just this cap on this little mechanism part here, and the smart thing to do would be to take all of these caps off and then glue them on so that they don't come on in the sawing process. But the problem with these caps is that they're really annoying to take off, so I'm just not gonna bother with that. I will say, even at this point, I'm not totally sure that this idea of cutting the mini Eastsheen 2x2 is actually gonna work. I might have to revert to designing a fully 3D printed 2x2 for this. Like, seriously, I've made mods before where I had to chop up some mini Eastsheen 2x2s, like this, which is my 3x3x2 evil twin. Stickers by Oliver Stickers, if you want some stickers like this. And this is just two 2x2s in a Siamese configuration. So here's one of them, here's the other, and then obviously I had to cut them to share this corner because the two corners would have been too big. But even that's pretty minor in terms of the amount of material I had to remove compared to what I'm going to have to do here. So honestly, this is more of an experiment than anything else, at least for me. Another thing is that I think if I go too far, I actually won't be able to glue it in very well. At least that's what I think. So what I'm going to actually end up doing is first cut like a little bit of it off, and then instead of sawing more and more, I'm just going to sand the corner down so that I can sand it just a little bit each time, and then I'll see when this is ready. And lastly, when this actually is properly shaped, Normally, when you glue on a 3D printed extension, you can just stick it on like this, and it's obvious where it should go, right? But with this, because it's cut so weirdly and it's at an offset, it's actually going to be possible that it will sit improperly. So what I'm actually going to do is, when I'm going to glue the extensions on, I'll have this piece, which I don't even know what puzzle this is from, I just had this on my desk. I'll just have this next to it to act kind of as a stopper so that this sits in the correct spot. So, your guess is as good as mine. Let's try to see how we can saw off technically an edge, not so much a corner, of this mini Eastsheen 2x2. Alright, so I remember this happening last time, where as you get closer and closer to the completion, the outer cap part will kind of just come off like this. So what I'm gonna have to just do is finish cutting this off and then glue it back on. And here we are, this part is off. So if we just tentatively stick this back on, you can see that the cut is very uneven, and it's probably not even close to actually being, that's the wrong part, to actually being enough to fit this on here, although we're getting somewhere. I will say, please don't try this at home, but if you do, make sure to wear protective covering for your face. You don't want to be inhaling plastic dust, and also, this is a very dull saw, but if you have a sharper one, please wear hand protection. So, I'm not going to film the entire process of this because I'm sure you can guess what it's going to be like. But it's just going to be a tedious process of sanding this down gently with the sandpaper or a nail file, and then seeing if it fits into this extension. It's just going to be a matter of fine-tuning it. At the very least, I do think it should at least reasonably be possible to get this down to an appropriate depth. So, I'll try that out, see how it turns out, and then get back to you. Now that I'm done voiding the warranty that this cube never had, let's take a look at the damage. Yeah, so I've basically cut down to the level at which the internal edges and centers reside, because I think any further than that and this puzzle would not really stand a chance of functioning. But as it stands, actually it works perfectly fine. Functionality is basically as it was when the cube was fully intact, which is actually amazing given how much material was removed. Like, most of these pieces on the corners barely exist now, except for the top and the bottom parts. So the next step is just going to be, as I said earlier, gluing these extensions on. And in order to make sure that the extensions go on in the correct spot, I have this just generic extension that I can put here to act as a stopper for this triangular extension. These are all of the extensions. Again, there's two types of them. This is the one that I've shown you earlier, and then this is the second one, and into this one, the 1x2x3 outer parts will hook into, but obviously that comes later. Right now, the goal is just going to be getting all of these extensions onto the cube. So let's get to it. Alright, now that all of the pieces are glued onto the mini Eastsheen 2x2, this project is starting to finally look less like a mess and more like something that will actually end up working out. So, because superglue can fuse some of the parts together, I'm going to right now gently pry all of the parts apart and kind of break the puzzle in a little bit, and then afterwards it'll be a fairly simple process to put all of the 1x2x3 corners onto the cube. So I'll get back to you when that's done. And here we are, finally all of the parts are assembled of the Junior Mental Flop Extreme. You can see that it turns as you would expect a 1x2x3 to turn. You can make the slice move as well as the outer moves, which are a bit stiff. These do need to be broken in. And then it also works as a fully functional 2x2 cube, which means you can turn it like this, etc. So now that this is all done, I'm actually kind of surprised how well it turns, given how little of the original 2x2's corners actually still exist. But honestly, I always did think that this puzzle's mechanism is fairly resilient, so it's not too surprising. Anyway, all that's left now is to sticker it up and then the puzzle will be complete. And here we are, the Junior Mental Flop Extreme is fully stickered. Honestly, I think it looks pretty decent, and I also like how it is the same size as a 2x2x1 type puzzle. So, let's take this puzzle outside and see how it works. Now that the Junior Mental Flop Extreme is all broken in, it turns more or less alright. The 1x2x3 outer turns are still stiffer than I'd like them to be, which might be a tolerance issue, but I'm not too worried about it. The 2x2 turns are actually more or less okay, the only problem being sometimes they get a little bit catchy, which I would attribute to the fact that the inner mini 2x2 is very heavily modified. The puzzle is going to shapeshift like crazy when it's all scrambled. You can see that even from 1 to 2 turns you can get shapes that look nothing like the original. So it's kind of like the mirror cube and super floppy cube, where you don't necessarily have to derive all the fun from the actual solve. You could just have some fun making wacky shapes. Beyond that, the puzzle's fine. It looks okay, but I'm still not too happy about the fact that it's bigger than a 19mm cubey 1x2x3 would be. I consider this puzzle to be more of a learning experience and an experiment, rather than something I'm actually going to solve on a regular basis. But anyway, let's take this puzzle and scramble it. Despite how complex the Junior Mental Flop Extreme was to design and build, I honestly don't think it's going to be really all that difficult to solve, because at its core it's just a 2x2, which is not a difficult puzzle. And then a 1x2x3 being added onto it is going to make it a little more interesting, but not immensely. That's because a 1x2x3 has no illegal states. So 2 swapped corners on a 1x2x3 is a possible position. So really, the 2x2 moves don't make any illegal moves that aren't going to be able to solve on the 1x2x3 portion. Anyway, so I'm just going to solve this as a normal 2x2. Let's just do the first layer first, which would be orange, I guess. Okay, so here we have the orange side done, and now let's take a look at the red side. It looks like I'm going to have to orient these 2 corners, and then we'll see about permuting them. Okay, and all of the 2x2 parts are now oriented correctly. But as you can see, it's still not a cuboid, and that's because this corner should probably be swapped with this one. So let's work on that real quick. And here we are, the Junior Mental Flop Extreme is finally a cuboid. And that also means that the 2x2 portion should be solved. So now let's just solve the 1x2x3 part. Yeah, here we are. So overall, this is definitely a very easy puzzle to solve. However, it's one of those puzzles that falls into the category, it's not trivial, but it's not too hard, which, as I said in a different video, there's a place for that kind of puzzle. So the fact that it's not really that hard doesn't bother me that much. But that also does mean that I think I've said all there is to say about the Junior Mental Flop Extreme. Thank you all very much for watching, and have a great day.